Good evening and welcome to the Ogden City Council Council meeting of June 20th, 2017. This is the 6 p.m. City Council meeting. Please note that all council members are present. With that, I'm going to turn the time over to Vice Chair Heyer to do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Chair White. I'll take that honor today. If you would please stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance along with me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Please take a moment of silence with me. Thank you. Next on our agenda is a couple of recognitions. The first one is Richard Myers, and Councilmember Stevens is going to read that for us.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Before I start, I need to say a few things. You know, Gloria, you and Richard have taught by example in our community. Both of you have taught your family responsibility, respect for all, and most important of all, you taught your children how to work hard. There's three things that I think is important to you and Richard. Number one was family. The other one is your church. And the other one, most notably for Richard, is service to his country, but to his community. And so this recognition, even though we talk about Richard, we're really talking about both of you, because I'm sure if he was here today, he would say, I couldn't do it without you. The Ogden City Council and Mayor proudly recognizes Richard Myers for providing invaluable contribution to the Ogden community. Richard Myers contributed a lifelong legacy of service leadership to Ogden. He was best known as a businessman and president of the Myers Mortuary and Cremation Service. After serving in the U.S. Army, Richard took over his father's small business and transformed it into what it is today, a thriving community asset. He was recognized by former President George H.W. Bush and the National Funeral Directors Association, the FDDA, for his dedication and service to his profession as a funeral director. Richard was the founder of the FDA Pursuit of Excellence program and started the national acclaimed Good Grief program for widows. He was a founding member of the Weber State College Foundation and was the first president of the Eccles Arts Center and was the Northern Utah Director of Public Relations for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints for 17 years. Richard also served as a member of the McCady Hospital Board and trustee, chair of the Ogden Pioneer Days, and was involved in many other organizations in the community. Richard Myers was a compassionate, honest, and selfless man. We are saddened by his passing and offer our sincere condolences to his family, friends, and other close associates. We are tremendously grateful for his contribution to the community and are confident that his legacy will have a lasting impact for many years to come. Presented this 20th day of June 2017. And it was an honor to do that. Everything that was there is true about the standard and the character of Richard Myers, and I appreciate that.
All of the Myers people, would you please come forward? We're going to take a picture.
First of all, you got to have this.
That's so very kind of you. Thank you so much.
Do you want to
Let's
do the
take the
picture
picture
first?
first,
Brittany?
yeah.
Do you want to do the picture first? Since
You guys are going to have to come this way some.
That's better. Okay, 1, 2. Grab a few. Okay, I think we're good.
Now we'll shake your hands. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, Gary, do you think I can say a word?
We hope you can.
I got it. I got it.
just right up at the podium.
Go to the podium
Right
over
up
there.
by the microphone.
Yes,
Gloria, yeah. We want to hear what you have to say.
I want you to know that this is really touching for me. And Richard really lived his life to serve. I never remember a time in all of our lives that he did not have a job, that it wasn't doing something, excuse me, for the community. One of the first big ones was buying the Bertha Eccles Art Center. And we went down and we took all the people in our ward and we said, this is the budget, we have to clean the building. And the people in the ward came in and cleaned the building for the budget, and it amounted to about $10 a person for about 4 days of work. I can remember who was laughing about that because the building was old and had been used as students. Well, the other thing that I remember that was really interesting for us was when the JCs decided to do the park, the JC Park, and the railroad gave us the property, the city the property. And I remember so well, we fixed lunches and carried food up there for the men as they cleaned that, and it was just a big pile of weeds. I hate to say that, but I look at it now and I see all of the children up there playing, and they feed those children up in that area every day for lunch, and I think that was really worth all of the effort, because those children are really having an advantage of a free lunch because of that. He never did run for the city council, or his father did. He said, I don't think I could take what they go through in the council. He said they get a lot of work and a lot of mouth, and some of it's not so good. But the city has really prospered and really has done well with the leadership that we have had. And I look at you, and you're a classic example of what leadership for nothing can do. Because literally, I don't think they've ever paid you anything but gas mileage, have they? I mean, I really don't know. I don't remember, but I know it was at one time. I know they argued about paying the mileage when we turned to a council system, and I know I'm old, and that goes back a long way. But to see the things that have happened in Ogden City that have really helped us, with the closure of the railroad, and we lost a lot, then with the university helping us, and with the hospital, we have people come from all over to get to our hospital, and with Hill Air Force Base, this community has stayed alive well, and we have a lot of, and I don't know all of the stuff that they have out in the DDO, but that is just a booming place when I drive through there. When I would drive through there to go to the George Wall, and I just could not believe the businesses that had been there, and now he didn't help with that, but he was surely cheering for them. And Joe Florence used to work with that. They had the city depot out there. Is that where the office, that first office, Ogden City? What is that first office they had there when they started doing the DDO? Do you remember Joe Florence started that? He was out there with the building. And I remember that, and I thought, well, I hope that thing goes. And it has just boomed. It's just done so well. I think under the leadership of the people, our for free leaders, they have done a miraculous job with Ogden, because we've taken some real hits, but we've made some real hits also. I want to thank you for remembering my husband. I'm amazed how you found all that information. And I want to thank you on behalf of him and his family, and also my family that's here to support me tonight. And I thank you so much. And thank you, Mr. Stevens. And I'm sorry I didn't address you correctly when I started this, you know, Mr. Mayor, Mrs. Mayor and all. But I was having a hard time collecting my heads together. But you've done a great job, and you're doing well for the city, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
One more came in for the picture.
Here we have
We
some,
we should take another picture, I think,
Yeah,
maybe, because
I
we
think we
have
should.
Yeah,
some
we-
added people.
Here we do. Why don't you guys come back up for a picture again? You got a late one coming in with the kids.
Don't trip.
Yeah, I do. It's a limb.
Lots better than one without.
Grandma will like it.
That's right.
This is Doug Stevens, and he's the one that tried to get hold of me. I don't think you can't reach out there.
Teach you to be late.
Shake his hand.
We tried.
Come on, squeeze in here. Let's pretend like you like each other.
Okay. One, two, three, and I'm gonna grab you. I think we're good.
Good seeing you around.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. You too.
Well, it's a little easier to do our job when we have the leaders that came before us, so thanks. The next on our agenda is a presentation by the Zero Fatalities people. And I think Kylie Christensen that's here tonight. All right, come up.
Thank you. And I'm sure there's a system, but I'm talking to everyone, so I hope you don't mind that if I...
You
We
have
do
to
need to
talk
use
into
the
the
mic.
microphone, and sorry
They'll,
about
they'll
that.
see you on the screen.
Okay, I'm usually presenting to my high school kids, so it's a lot different. As you can tell, this is not my normal crowd. So I'm with Zero Fatalities, and by raise of hands, how many of you have ever heard of Zero Fatalities before? Maybe you guys as well. Okay, great. Where have you guys heard of us?
TV.
Billboards.
Billboards. You
Yeah.
probably have seen us on the freeway, is that right? Perfect. So my next question is, by raise of hands, how many of you think Zero Fatalities is a realistic goal? You guys are courageous. 4? How many back here? Okay, 1. 5 people. Usually I don't get very many, if at all. In a group this size, I probably won't even get a hand. I can be in a presentation, 300 people, not one hand. So my question is, what if our goal was 125? We lost 280 lives last year on Utah roads. So 125, that's a pretty big number still, but we're getting there. Then our program would be called Fewer is Always Better. What if I said 5? You know what? 5 is all we could handle. The 5 hands in here. But then it would be nobody's perfect. So my question is, what's the only acceptable goal for you and your family?
0.
0. Absolutely. 94% of all crashes are due to human error here on Utah highways and roads anywhere you are in the state of Utah. So now you're thinking, 94, that's a really big percentage, and it is. But why is this number also really hopeful? 94%.
Because we can avoid it.
Absolutely, we can change it. You'll notice throughout my entire presentation, I will never say accident, because we pretty much don't see accidents on our roadways. We see crashes. So 94%, we can avoid these. The top 5 behaviors that all Utahns need to avoid are these: drowsy driving, distracted driving, aggressive driving, impaired driving, and not buckling up. The top 4 behaviors, those are behaviors that we physically do behind the wheel. But that bottom behavior, that is a safety device that is implanted in our vehicle to make sure that we are safe in a crash. So by raise of hands, or I guess you just tell me, which one do you think takes the most lives in Utah almost every single year?
Not buckling up.
Not buckling up.
Okay, you did hear the right answer. Not buckling up. 86 people in 2015 and 2016 lost their lives here in Utah because they decided to not put on their seatbelt. So why am I here today? I'm here because specifically for Weber County, we have seen 4 fatalities in 2016. 4. As far as serious injuries, 37. And of course, our crash is 1,107. So that top number, 4 fatalities. When I said what is the only number of acceptable goals, you guys said 0. So that 4, those are 4 people in your community that have lost their lives because they or somebody else was doing some type of behavior inside a vehicle that caused that crash to happen. So at 0 fatalities, we are going around to every community that we can here in the state of Utah and presenting our 100 Deadliest Days campaign. We see traffic fatalities here in Utah nearly double between Memorial Day and Labor Day. Nearly double. So what we're doing, like I said, is we are reaching out to every community we can to share the message. We want to share our top 5 deadly behaviors, but we specifically want to say, hey, you know what? We understand that 0 fatalities, that's a really big goal. We get that. But we want you to make that your personal goal, your community goal. So what we have done is we have teamed up with a lot of different communities throughout the state. First off, like I said, we want you to share this with your family and friends, but partnership with our local schools. If there's anyone that comes to mind right now that wants to share a message of 0 fatalities, please let me know. That is my goal. My goal is to leave today knowing there is someone in Ogden, someone close by, that wants to make this their personal goal. First, of course, set an example. You be the one to buckle up. You be the one to tell your friends and your family, hey, you know what? I want you to be safe, so will you please put your phone down? 100 Deadliest Days is a really big campaign. We're spreading it all across the state, but we know that you guys can do it. Specifically, these are all the programs that we offer. The first 2, 0 fatalities and Don't Drive Stupid, those are our teen programs. We actually reach out to the high schools and we do a parent night presentation, many of you may have seen this before, where we teach new teen drivers and their parents about our top 5 deadly behaviors and sharing these stories. So with these programs, if you have a high school, you have a middle school that wants us to share your message, please reach out to us. All of these services are free to the entire state of Utah. We come all the time. I go to Ogden High almost regularly. I love coming up here. I love the community. Everyone is super tight-knit. I get that. Heads Up program is targeting our pedestrians, motorists, and all of our vulnerable roadway users. TruckSmart is looking at all of our semis and making sure that we are safe around semis as drivers on and in the vehicle. All of the other ones, you'll notice, are pretty much targeted to any type of seatbelt safety. If you have an elementary school, a business, somebody that wants us to come talk specifically about seatbelts, anything, any one of our behaviors, we would love to do so. We have specifically created a landing page for our Don't Drive Stupid website. Here you can go and you can see our statistics for each year. You can see the statistics for this summer. We have also shared shareable resources. We have shared blog posts. We have social media content that you simply download and you can share on any platform that you would like. This is an example here of what our social media page would look like. You can tell they're already structured and formatted for you. You simply go along. You can tweet that, Instagram, Facebook, whatever type of social medium that you can share that. So my goal here today is to make sure that you each are driving safely. But more importantly, if you have someone in your community, someone in your family, somebody in a business that you know of, anyone that you feel close to, please share their message, but more importantly, have them call us. Have them contact us. We would love to help share a story. If they have had a teen fatality, any fatality, we would love to share their story and make sure that whether it's drowsy driving, distracted, impaired, aggressive, or not being in a seatbelt has affected their lives, so we don't have to continue to share their message. So please make zero fatalities your goal. I have some posters and I have some information about each one of our programs if anyone feels that they need one. Thank you.
Great,
Thanks, Kylie.
Any questions for her before she gets away too far?
You know what the fatalities in Weber County is in 2017 so far?
2017, we're not sure our statistics. They base it off of the end of the year, so we don't get our statistics until Utah Department of Transportation has given the rest of the year.
Okay.
We won't know that until probably middle of March of next year. As of right now, we have 13 fatalities in the state of Utah, so that's the active statistic for Memorial Day. So between Memorial Day and now, we've had 13 fatalities.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I just want to, it looks, the chambers looks a little more full than normal, and I just want to make sure that, that if you're here for the Adams Community Reinvestment Area discussion, we're going to pull that from our agenda. So I didn't want you to stick around if you don't, if that's what you are here to talk about. And if that's not ringing a bell, then please stay. We'll move on. Did you have a question? You kind of said it.
What do you mean by that?
We're going to discuss an area, the Adams reinvestment area. And if you don't, no, that's a different one.
It's item number 3 on our redevelopment agency meeting, so.
And since it's not ringing a bell, I think you should stick around. Okay. I just didn't want people to be here knowing that that was going to be pulled from the agenda. Not that we don't want you here, but please stay. So next on our agenda are a couple of common consent items. The Christmas Village Committee and the fiscal year 2018 to 2022 Capital Improvement Plan Amendment.
Chair White,
Oh, go ahead.
I make a motion that we adopt both items 5A and 5B as common consent.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Garner. I'm going to go, and a second by Councilmember Lopez. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed to that? Great, that passes.
And do we have any of the individuals for the Christmas Village Committee, the nominations? Okay, thank you.
Next on our agenda are 4 public hearings. The first one is for the fiscal year 2017 budget amendment year-end adjustments. And
Lisa Stat will be presenting that.
thank you.
Thank you, Chair White, council members. It's a pleasure to be here with you. This is our final budget opening for fiscal year 2017. This is to appropriate revenue received in excess of budget or additional budgeted, additional revenues planned for, and additional expenses. We reviewed this in detail in a work session 2 weeks ago. I am just going to quickly touch on a few of the bigger items included in this budget opening. Administration is proposing the appropriation of a total of $346,100 in the general fund. This will replace the budget for the management study of the police department that was budgeted in fiscal year 16 by council and was not included in the carry forward, so this will appropriate fund balance to include that. Additionally, we are appropriating some overtime reimbursements the police department has received in the amount of $70,000. These are generally from work that they do for the FBI and other federal agencies. We are also proposing the appropriation of money being transferred from the CIP fund to the general fund. These are cost savings from work done at the Golden Hour Center to redo their parking lot and their lights. We would like to appropriate that to do an asphalt overlay at the Marshall White Center, and that appropriation is $53,000. Additionally, we're recommending the appropriation of $50,000 in the hotel tax. These are funds received in excess of the budget. They will be appropriated to be paid to the CVB for the work they do for the city. That contract with them is based on total revenues received, so they receive a portion of them. In the CIP fund, the recommendation is to appropriate an additional $170,000. This is appropriation from the sale of property up on Harrison. The city purchased property for the widening and was able to turn around and sell it. These will be appropriated. This $120,000 will be appropriated for road improvements, and additionally an appropriation of $50,000 from the Dino Park agreement with the foundation in the amount of $50,000 for trail maintenance. We are also recommending the appropriation of $1,315,000 in the water fund. This will come from fund balance to be used for SCADA improvements, the monitoring and technology system that the water department has been implementing the past several years. Additionally, to cover depreciation expense in excess of the estimated budget. We're recommending the appropriation of $74,800 in the sewer fund. This will be used to cover the depreciation expense. In the Hinckley Airport Fund, we are recommending the appropriation of $670,250. This is related to a grant received in the amount of $488,000 from the FAA for snowplow equipment. Additionally, city match of $54,000 that will come from fund balance of the airport, and additional depreciation expense in excess of budget. The golf course fund, we're recommending the appropriation of $79,700 for depreciation expense in excess of budget. And in the recreation fund, we are recommending the appropriation of $45,000. This is additional revenue received over budget and for additional depreciation expense. In the storm sewer fund, we're recommending the appropriation of $248,500, again for depreciation expense in excess of budget. In the fleet and facilities fund, we're recommending the appropriation of $220,000. This is additional equipment replacement budget for equipment that has been purchased outside of the fleet replacement program by other departments. Some CNG tax credits in the amount of $67,500, and facilities charges in the amount of $150,000 over the current budget. We're also recommending the appropriation of $1 million in the IT fund. This represents purchases made through grants and other programs that the IT department does, and then the IT department bills those other city departments. This is a true-up entry to allow that budget to match the activity they've had for the year. In the risk management budget, we're recommending the planned return to retained earnings to be used towards additional workers' comp expenses, and an additional appropriation of $4,000 for the Gomer Nicholas Fund. Additionally, we have $283,225 in the miscellaneous grants fund. This is just to recognize grant activity the city has had during the last 4 months of the year and to appropriate an expenditure for each of those. Finally, we're recommending an appropriation of $195,000 for the sale of an asset that the business income, the BIC, is going to recognize this year. The proceeds from that sale will be used to pay off a debt that the BIC has. Any questions regarding this budget opening?
I do have a question about the overtime for police.
Yes.
So you mentioned that most of those charges are for work done for the FBI.
FBI, strike force,
Events.
events, any work the city has done that has caused us to incur costs, we bill for.
So you bill for, does that mean, in the case, for example, so what work with the FBI? Just for example.
There are a couple of officers to assign to assist on FBI cases. So each pay period,
Federal cases?
they record their hours spent on those activities, and we bill the FBI for them.
Okay, so we bill the FBI, so although we're appropriating funds to cover that, we're not paying for it. They are.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, this is a public hearing, so if there's anyone that would like to speak to the fiscal year 2017 budget amendment and the year-end adjustment, so just this topic, please come up and do so.
Madam Chair, seeing no movement, I move that we close the public hearing.
Second?
Motion by Vice Chair Heyer, second by Councilmember Nadolski to close the public hearing. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the public hearing is closed for this item.
And Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we adopt proposed ordinance 2017-27.
I second it.
We have a motion by Councilmember Garner, second by Councilmember Stevens to adopt this proposed ordinance. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Blair,
Aye.
Councilmember Garner,
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez,
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski,
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens,
Aye.
Vice Chair Heyer,
Aye.
Chair White.
Aye, that passes. Next on the agenda is fiscal year 2018 salary schedules. Smith.
Chair White, council members, I appreciate the opportunity to present the salary schedules for the FY18 budget. You may recall June 6th, the council adopted the tentative budget, which included the salary schedules, but you're not set to adopt the final budget until August 8th, and that's because you've determined you'd like to consider whether or not to increase the certified tax rate for the city. What you're voting on tonight are salary schedules, and we haven't talked much about that in our work session, although it's been included with all of our budget documents. But I took some screenshots just to show for the example of the kinds of information that are included in the salary schedules. This is for the non-merit employees. This would be something that you go to the budget and you can look up, and it's essentially all of these salaried positions in the city, or the non-merit. And it gives ranges for each of the positions. So any given employee who, say, a division manager, could be making anywhere within that range, from $69,900 to $95,600. The merit employees, this is...
Sorry, and just one clarification, non-merit means at will?
Salaried. Technically, all city employees are at will. It just means that they're salaried, and so they receive a salary as opposed to an hourly rate. So this is what the merit employees look like. It's a salary rate. We have range numbers, and each position that we have in the city is assigned a range number. And that is based on benchmarking against the 5 other cities that the city benchmarks against. So this is an example, a pay range 20 makes between 24.8 and 33.9. Last year, the city council approved that the police and fire would move to steps. Prior to that year, for a period of time, they were on the same schedule as the regular merit employees, hourly employees. So we adopted a step program for both police and fire. This is the police step program. So you can see an entry-level police officer makes an annual of $38,700. And this is fire. So an entry step police officer makes $38,700 as well. So that was an example of what's included in the salary schedules. Actually, I'd spent some time the last couple of weeks going through budgets of other cities just for comparison's sake. And not every city includes these kinds of schedules with their budgets. And I think this is really helpful because it's one step that we include to be more transparent, to show what our employees are making. The tentative budget that you adopted on June 6th did include funds for increases for city employees that would go into effect July 1, and that's why we needed to put this on for consideration for tonight so that those would be in place for July 1. For the STEP and merit employees, there was $1.7 million included to cover those pay increases. There was also an additional $310,000 as a fix. You may recall we made some adjustments to police and fire last year for years where there were no pay increases over the last 10 years or so. And so there's an additional $310,000 that makes a similar fix for regular non-sworn employees for a total of $2,054,000. So with that, unless you have any questions, the recommendation from staff is that you adopt these salary schedules as proposed.
Any questions?
Very clear. Thank you.
All right, this too is a public hearing, so if anyone would like to come up and speak regarding the 2018 salary schedules, please come up now.
Seeing no movement, I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Vice Chair Heyer, second by Councilmember Blair to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the public hearing is closed.
And Chair White, I'll make a motion that we adopt proposed ordinance 2017-28 for the salary schedules.
We have a motion by Councilmember Garner, second by Vice Chair Heyer to adopt the proposed ordinance 2017-28. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Garner.
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Vice Chair Heyer.
Aye.
Chair White.
Aye, that passes. Next on our agenda is the Enterprise Transfer Fund transfers, sorry.
Lisa Stout will be making that presentation.
Ms. Stout.
Thank you. Again, it's a pleasure to be here. Beginning about a month ago, the city started mailing notices to each person that received a utility bill from the city. Included in that notice was the disclosure that the city was taking money out of the enterprise funds, the utility enterprise funds, to transfer to the general fund and also to public art improvements. Quickly, I just wanted to talk about the notice. I've had some comments that the notice was, there we go, that the notice was a little hard to understand, so I quickly wanted to go through the important parts of the notice. Many years ago, when the city started doing this, they came up with some logic behind taking money from the enterprise funds. Currently, the enterprise funds are non-taxable. They pay no federal, state, or income tax. They also pay no franchise or property taxes. And the city came up with some logic to have the utility funds help support the general fund services. So they decided that they would take 6% of the charges for services revenue received in the utility funds and call that a franchise tax. Since the city can't tax the utilities, it's sort of an in lieu of charge that the city just takes the money. Additionally, the city has had a 1% for arts ordinance, and each public improvement, each capital outlay included a budget to move 1% to a fund where art could be funded from. Last year, I believe it was last year, that ordinance was changed so that it became a flat amount. It was easier to account for. They went back and they looked at a 5-year history of where that money was coming from, and they came up with $40,000 from water, $15,000 from sanitary sewer, and $10,000 from storm sewer that are moved to the CIP fund, where it's held in an account until it's appropriated for an art piece. Some examples of what it's been used for in the past few years: Fire Station 3 has a nice art piece on the outside of the building. That money was used to fund that. There's a wayfinding sign that was authorized by the council that will be put in the junction. Actually, I'm not sure where the installation is going to happen. The kites along Kiesel were funded through this art fund. There's an art piece at the airport terminal, and then there's some decorative inlays on the asphalt or the cement along the Grand Avenue Promenade that have been funded through this process. So along the top, we've listed water, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, and refuse. Those are the funds that are paying into the general fund. When you levy a tax, you're not charging for a specific service. You're charging to help support public safety, roads, parks, various things. The idea was that these funds would help the general fund pay for those items. The total amount of all the funds transfers is just over 4.8 in fiscal year 18. And the amount being taken for art is $75,000 in fiscal year 18, and that's a flat amount of $75,000 each year. I don't know why I can't make this work. Oh, sorry. This is a cost breakdown of each of the funds by major expenditure category. This is something that the state legislature has asked the city to disclose. So just quickly, we've broken this down into operating, overhead, transfers to the general fund, transfers to art, CIP funding, that's improvements for each of those funds. So in water, for example, we have 1.3 million listed. That is an appropriation to improve the water system in the amount of 1.3 in fiscal year 18. Debt service, and then any extra money that is being returned to fund balance that will be appropriated for future improvements. So that is available for your review and for the public's review as well. There is no action required with this public hearing. This is simply to notice the public that these transfers are being made. Thank you.
Are there any questions? All right. This is a public hearing, and we will accept public input on the enterprise fund transfers issue. Please come up and state your name, and you have 3 minutes.
Sorry, say that again?
State your name, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. John Thompson. Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair and the council. Appreciate this opportunity. When Ms. Stout said she had some comments on the public notice, I'm at least one of those. So I read this thing about 20 times, and I don't understand it. So I do not know right up front enough about this to be concerned. However, from the notice, I am interested in it, and about 4 or 5 city employees I spoke with, trying to get a better understanding of what's going on here. So if I say something, I don't mean to be offensive or imply at all that something underhanded or under the table is going on by either council or administration. That would be the last thing I think of here. So let me throw out some things, please. As I understand enterprise funds, they're a business-type activity by the city, and the funds generated from those should stay in that fund. I don't know when that was allowed that they could move them to the general fund. But now apparently there is some concern that a public hearing has to be taken or noticed to the public because this has been done in the past before. So a couple of years ago, or 10 or 5 or whatever, I understand my utility rates were increased in order to repair and replace the water infrastructure of the city, water lines, sewer, whatever else that includes. So now when I get this notice, I'm seeing $5 million, not only for this year as being proposed, but it's been taken out of that fund for a couple of years. Whether it's $5 million or not, I don't know either, because nobody could answer that. So I'm saying just by the surface of that, that seems to be wrong to me. The second part is from the notice wording, and Ms. Stout also said she would recommend to somebody maybe redoing that wording from it, rather than the minimum information, more information to be provided so somebody could understand this a little bit better. Because I don't know if it's the bill I'm paying for my water utilities, I don't know if the taxes I'm charged and paying that's being transferred, or a combination of both. And why is it being transferred? Because the general fund is short, and rather than raise property taxes, we're just going to transfer this money, which I guess is an easy thing to do, but I don't know if it's a right thing to do. It's not right from what I know about it. And the other questions I've been trying to get answered is, based on that, my assumption or recollection that money was supposed to be collected to repair the infrastructure, how much money is going to be taken out of that fund over the years that's now been transferred to the general fund that was collected on the basis of improving the water infrastructure? I heard the bell, and I guess that's my time.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Thompson. Any other comments?
Okay, I will make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion by Vice Chair Heyer, second by Councilmember Nadolski to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair, would you like me to clarify one or two things?
Before we move on, that'd be great.
Other utilities like Rocky Mountain Power, Questar, they pay a franchise fee. They collect a franchise fee. That franchise fee goes to us because they're always in our streets, they're in our right-of-ways, and so that helps cover and defray, because anytime they go into a street and dig in a street, it it probably lessens the life of that street, and we have to repair it or replace it on a much more frequent basis. The utilities that are in the ground, water, sewer, storm sewer, all get in the ground too, and they lessen the cycle of roads. We feel it's fair that they pay that a franchise fee, and part of this is a franchise fee that's charged to other utilities, and it goes, the owner of the roads and the other infrastructure is the city. It isn't the water department, isn't the sewer department, isn't the storm sewer department. So we're simply applying what we apply to other utility companies to our own water department to help defray the cost and things that go on with the streets. Anytime we cut into a road to replace a water line or a sewer line, the life cycle of that road is lessened dramatically. Rocky Mountain Power and other utilities also pay a property tax for the property they own, and the water department doesn't do that, of course, and so the other portion of that percentage we charge is for that. They're kind of their share of property tax that would come to the general fund. We're not trying to play switch and bait. We're not trying to play the shell game. We've got these percentages in the ground. They don't move. They don't change. Other cities don't always do it that way. They do what you were suggesting, where they say, well, how much are we short in the general fund? We don't do that. The percentage stays the same, and it has since I've been here. And we were doing this long before we raised the rates because of the infrastructure issues we have in the city. So I feel good about the way we do this. I think the city's above board in doing it. There are other cities that own power companies, electrical power companies, and transfer millions and millions and millions of dollars. And the legislature was concerned that that those citizens in those cities didn't know that transfer was taking place. And so they wanted to have a more public way and process to alert people. And being able to send the notice out, we work on that notice to try and meet the law and also make it understandable. And sometimes those two don't mix very well. We don't write the law, but we're trying to abide by the law. And that's what took place. That's why you're getting the notices. This has just started over the last few years. They put more into what we have to disclose and what we have to notice and what we have to show this last year in the legislature. We're not opposed to that. We feel like we have a very transparent way of doing this and a real logical means of setting in the ground the percentages that we actually transfer, and we do so every year. Those percentages haven't changed since I've worked here, which is quite a while. So that maybe is a little more explanation. Now, if you'd like to stay after class, Lisa would be happy to sit down and maybe help if you have other questions to answer.
You're right. Another thing that my understanding is, and perhaps I'm wrong, but isn't it true that the utilities don't pay all their own expenses? There are services that the city provides those utilities that this transfer does also help.
Yeah, we have overhead costs that, they don't, water doesn't pay part of my salary, but I have responsibility as manager of the city for water, sewer, storm sewer, refuse, et cetera. That's the case. The other thing, the way to look at it too is, let's say we decided not to do this transfer anymore and let's just raise property tax. Well, none of the nonprofits pay property tax, but they do pay their utility bill. And so the IRS and Weber County and the state of Utah and all of the nonprofit properties we have in the city of Ogden, which is substantial, they're at least paying something towards the upkeep of the city and where they don't pay property tax. So if we shifted this to property tax, it would probably burden people who, even more the widow and et cetera, would even more, because none of the nonprofits would pay any of that properties in our city. So it's kind of an interesting, debate that's going on at the legislature, and debate's gone on here. But that's a great question that you asked.
Well, one other, as I understand what John is asking, is about the repairs or projects. Are some of those going to be taken off the table because of this transfer?
No. Because we were making this transfer long before we did the schedule of rates, and so no, this hasn't affected any of what we've been planning to do.
If I could,
We've actually tore up more roads in the since we changed the rates, because we've done a lot more pipe work in the city, and if you want evidence of that, just go above Harrison, between about 23rd Street and 20th, it's, anyway.
Thank you.
so I remember the first time I looked at this, just at first and on its surface, and having listened to comments, a lot of feedback similar to what Mr. Thompson shared with us, it didn't make sense to me at first either. One thing that helped me, and Mr. Thompson's comments kind of triggered the memory for me, was he referred to our utility funds as business-like activities. And, if you think about it, if you're a business, whether you're a business in Ogden or a business in another community, to do business here, you pay taxes, you pay fees. Money comes to the city so the city can provide the services and the infrastructure and the et cetera for that business to operate. So that was the mental shift I had. And Lisa, I thank you both last year and this year for stepping through all my questions again to refresh me about it. But I certainly empathize with the concerns I hear from my constituents about it, because on its surface I see where they're coming from. But I hope that analogy that helped me may help you, Mr. Thompson, or help others as they also wrestle with it the same way I did. Thanks.
We will do a deeper dive on this in the water rate study, which is coming up later this year. So those of you who are interested can kind of keep an eye out for those kind of discussions, because that is where a lot of these questions get a lot more detailed of an answer. So.
All right. Moving on, we have the fiscal year 2018 final budget. Ms. Eller-Smith.
Appreciate the opportunity to now talk about the final budget. And I'm going to do sort of a real quick review of the budget, and then talk a little bit more about the proposed tax increase that I'd mentioned. So the mayor's proposed budget that you received on May 2nd was for $166 million and some change. That was actually down from the previous year, FY17, down more than $14 million, or more, almost 8%. The primary reason for that reduction over from FY17 was in FY17, you may recall, we issued some bonds in the water department, $17 million of new funds. The mayor had and the administration had requested that the council consider a property tax increase, but I wanted to point out that the budget doesn't include additional funds for the property tax that would be generated by an increase. That's different than what happened last year. You may recall we had a difficult situation with police and fire, and we really needed to make up, catch them up for many years of going without increases, and to be more competitive with other communities. And so when the mayor proposed that budget, there were actually already funds that would be what required a tax increase in order to cover. That's not the case with this budget. They're just requesting that property tax increase for reasons that we'll discuss in just a minute. It did also include the step increases and salary adjustments, which I mentioned when we discussed the salary schedules. You adopted the tentative budget on June 6th, and now we're heading into the process on the final budget. This is the first public hearing on that final budget. We scheduled 3 because we wanted to make sure that citizens had plenty of opportunity to comment on the budget if they so desired. Next week, you'll have your first serious work session on that final budget. We will have our financial advisors here to review with you the general fund financial sustainability model. And we now have the certified tax rate back from the state and county, so they can actually put real numbers to that financial sustainability model. To date for this year, they've just had to make some assumptions about where those numbers would come in. So that will be a really important work session for you and for the public to understand what may happen to the final budget in the future. You may recall for FY18, the general fund financial model estimated a shortfall, or at least an additional need of $520,000 to cover just operational costs. And again, that money is not in the budget, but obviously needed, or administration is requesting that additional money because it's needed to cover operational costs. With the tentative budget, you adopted some changes to the minor amounts to the general fund. We shift some money from the CIP to the RDA. So the actual adopted tentative budget is actually lower than the mayor's proposed. It's about 165. The final budget does have an additional change, Schedule A1 proposed, and this is additional funding of $250,000 to come from BDO to the CIP, and that's to cover additional seating at the rodeo grounds, the stadium there. I won't take time to go through the budget and items that are supporting the council priorities. I just wanted to make it clear that your priorities were considered as the mayor and administration put together your budget, and it does cover all of those areas of active, healthy living and community outreach and public safety, the things that the council feels really important for the budget. So to focus on truth in taxation, I want to just take a minute and do kind of a little refresher course, because property tax is different than any other tax that we pay, and that's because it's based or designed for what we call revenue neutrality. That means the revenue stays the same every single year, and then we can get new growth. So, for example, if last year we received $10 million in property tax, the State Tax Commission goes through their models to determine what rate would generate $10 million in this current year. And as a result of that, when values increase, as they do because we have cost of living and that often goes up, as values increase, the rate has to proportionally go down to generate that same amount of money. We do have high tax rates in the state of Ogden, city of Ogden, but that's because we have lower property values here. And it takes the same amount of services and costs to serve a home that's worth $150,000 as it does a $300,000 house. So to provide fire and police and all of the other services that the city provides, those costs are the same, and so we have to have higher rates to generate the revenue. As I mentioned, because the state tax commission has to adjust the rate to create the same amount of revenues for the upcoming year, as you can see, the rate continually has gone down. Until last year, the city had not raised the property taxes in 30 years. And even last year, the rate that you adopted was not as high as the previous year. The way you were able to do that is because we had a GO bond that was paying off. And so the rate was still a little bit lower than the previous year. You can see on this chart the tax rate history Those years where there have been some increases correspond with years when there's been recessions. So when the value of the property goes down, the rate has to increase to generate that same amount of tax revenue. You have to remember that there's no cost of living built into this certified tax rate. And that becomes important when you start comparing it to previous years, because we all know that we're all losing buying power as prices and everything increase. To offset some of that, the city has done everything it can to instigate cost-saving measures and efficiencies. And I've highlighted this in the current year budget. Engineering has brought some in-house engineers. That's a net savings of $286,000. That's ongoing, that will be every year. So they're doing their engineering in-house as opposed to paying consultants to do it. The way we're handling on concrete is an efficiency that's saving some money. The fire chief was pretty creative in the way they used to staff their additional ambulance. And then we're doing remote meter reading and facilities audits to make sure we're as energy efficient as we can be. And then we are instigating or implementing an ERP, which is a computer system that will allow us to identify, give us better data so that we can use that to highlight areas where we can find future savings. And I mentioned in the work session that I kind of geeked out in the last couple of weeks to kind of doing this comparison. I had the recorders were kind enough to find me the budget for the 1998 fiscal year. And I went through that and found some interesting numbers. In 1998, we had a population of about 74.5. We had 563 employees. In FY18, or current year, we have about 85,000, and we're proposing 606 employees. That's one more than we had last year. That's a difference of 43 employees. But when you do it employees per thousand, we're actually lower than we were 20 years ago. We had fewer employees per thousand than we were 20 years ago. When you look at police, we have 43 more employees than we did 20 years ago. 37 of those employees are in the police department. The sworn per thousand, sworn police officers per thousand, that's sort of a good way to determine whether or not we have enough public safety for our citizens. We are in 1998, we're at 1.53, we're at 1.69, which is higher, but average according to FBI information for cities of our size is about 2 per thousand. And Councilmember Nadolski asked for some additional information with regard to that, which we'll be presenting in the upcoming weeks. Fire personnel, we actually have fewer fire personnel per thousand than we did in 1998. Some of that is because this is general fund. Talking specifically, we do have the medical that can offset some of that, the medical fund. I took the 1998 dollars. In 1998, the city had property tax revenue of $8.7 million. When you do a present value on that 8.7 in today's dollars is worth $12.8 million. The tentative budget that you adopted has property tax revenue at $11,360,000. That's $1,400,000 less in real dollars than we had in 1998. And that number didn't include any new growth. So that was just that 8.7 million to 12 point. That's just real dollars. It doesn't include any new growth for the 20 years. And as you know, we have had a lot of new growth, particularly in the last 8 to 10 years. So I took a very conservative number and just figured out what a 1% growth would be over the 20 years, and that came up to $2.25 million. If you add that to the $12.8 million, that would mean in today's dollars, we should have $15 million, assuming we had the same tax, we had received the same amount of money that we had in 1998. Compare that to the $11.3 million that we're getting, or we're forecasting that we'll receive. We're $3,600,000 less real dollars than we had in 1998. So I think that's a pretty good shows you that the city has tried its very, very hardest over the last 20 years to be as efficient as it can. But at some point, efficiency only goes so far. I mean, those costs are still rising, and we still have to make hard decisions to do that. One of the other things I wanted to show you is how the revenue sources are distributed. And I pulled all of the revenue for 1998 and for FY 2018 to show where those are coming from. Franchise tax, we sometimes consider that a sales tax too. It's similar. In 1998, 25% of the city's revenues came from property tax. In FY 18, only less than 20% will come. We're relying a lot more on sales tax and franchise tax and other revenues to cover the revenues that we need to cover services for the city. And the reason it's important to give some thought to this is because, for one thing, property taxes are the only thing that the city can control. We know that sales tax is very volatile. Franchise tax is set by the city. Our other revenues are often dependent on the amount of building that's going on, because that's building fees and other things that are not necessarily within the city's control. So with all that good news, I just wanted to review the schedule for your truth in taxation. As I mentioned, next week is going to be a big week for you, and we will start needing some direction from you as staff on where we want to go and what additional information you need to help you make your decisions. We'll be starting our communications plan, and we'll have some other options for public input. And we'll have another public hearing on July 11th, and then another one on August 8th, where you will be taking final action on the budget. One of the things we're excited and kind of nervous about is we're going to be having a Facebook Live event, actually 2 of them, one on July 11th and one on August 1st, and we will make sure that the citizens get ample notice of those and explain to them how they can participate in those events. So with those, if you have any questions, we just tonight's just the first of 3 public hearings, so no final action. We just open for comment. If you have any questions.
Questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
On your on the slide, Janine, that you talked about the certified tax rate history, you commented that the rate is usually higher when there's a recession or the economy is suffering. And I'm looking at the graph there on 2008, which when we have the recession, actually the rate is lower, not higher. So I'm not sure.
But if you could also, it dropped down in 2008, and the recession, it didn't come back until 2008, 2012. We didn't, our values were still low during all those years. We didn't start, and so there was no tax increase. The council didn't do anything to make those rates go up. The reason...
Not the council, but
right.
the adjustment that you explained, it's a formula from the state where they set the certified tax rate based on to have the equal amount.
Right.
So I was just curious if that was the case. Then it seems like during the recession, the tax rate was lower, not higher.
Well, remember, 2008 is when it hit. So it was going down, where our values were increasing, 2008, boom. And now you can see our values are lower, our values are lower, our values are lower. Okay, then in 2012, we start doing a little bit better.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Actually, during this recession we had, 2007, 2008, mysteriously Ogden's value stayed pretty flat. Because we weren't really high, we didn't really dive off, and we kind of just stayed. We had some drop off, but not as much as a lot of other cities did.
And you can see that it's minor increases.
Thank you.
Are we trying to maintain our buying power? Is that what this budget is actually telling us, is that today's dollar, we have to have X number of dollars to equalize what that buying power would be?
Well, and I think that's what you as the council have to consider. I mean, I think that's just a really important consideration, and that's why I went through all of this review to show you just how much buying power we've lost in 20 years. And so how fast you want to, if you want to recoup that, how fast you want to recoup that, that's the decision that the council has to make, and it's not an easy one, I know.
Wanted to make a comment, if I may. I had the same confusion as Councilmember Lopez, so I appreciated that clarification. I also I wanted to thank you for a lot of folks that are watching this meeting. It may appear as though we're seeing this information for the first time, but we've been digging through this so much, and in so much excruciating detail, it seems, for a lot of weeks here. I want to thank you for the work you did, because since I've come into this role, and we've talked about this issue of property tax and revenue, and the way state tax policy works, it's been very evident that qualitatively we could see that there was a concern, but the more and more we dig into it and the more information that we get, such as that you analyze for us, we've been able to quantify exactly what that challenge is. And I think it's important that people know that we are continually digging into the numbers and continually finding and further quantifying and refining exactly the extent of the challenge. That's been a long time coming for me. It's taken me a long time, and I realize that most of the people that are pay close attention to the work we're doing aren't given the same opportunity that I'm given to have that kind of a journey. But I hope that people will trust that we are doing it. And if they're doubting it, it's all in the record and in our minutes. But I want to thank you for walking through that journey with me and with us, and thank my colleagues for the same. It's been an eye-opener. This is a significant challenge, no doubt about it.
I think one of the biggest comments that you made that kind of stuck in my mind is the average home value here is $167,000 versus in Centerville it's $261,000, and it takes just as many resources to do a $167,000 home as it does the $261,000. So I appreciated that analogy. Made some great sense to me.
Another one, if you could put up that analogy of where the sales tax and property tax are.
Your three-legged, four-legged stool.
Yeah.
And you notice that there's maybe a 1% difference between 1998 and today in sales tax, and that's due to the attraction of economic development that the city has been able to attract into this area. But it's hard to find those businesses coming in that would raise it that far. But that's the reason that the value there is smaller than some of the others, is because of the economic development that the city has actually gone through and developed in the last year or 2 years, 5 years before.
Also, if I might inject, last year I pushed back really hard against the the rate, the amount of increase that we raised the property taxes, trying to be responsive to citizens' concerns, that we do be responsible with that tax money, that we should make sure that we have cut the fat and find places to stretch as best as we can, just like citizens do when their funds are limited. Over this past year, I've been keenly aware of the things that have been happening in Ogden that administration and the department heads have been implementing to make sure that we are getting the best bang for our buck, and Ogden does a great job. But from the data that Ms. Eller-Smith has brought forward, it is evident that we are still getting behind on our buying power and getting the things to keep levels of service where citizens expect them to be. And so I appreciate being educated by our consultant and our staff and our administration to help us to be fully informed and to have a real good grasp of the relationships of how the money works and how stretching the budget works and all those kind of things. I'm very comfortable. I hope our citizens, when they do come to give us public input, bring their good ideas, because that's always helpful. This Facebook Live event, these two that are coming up, I hope people will get on and bring us their good ideas and help us to be better stewards of the public funds.
Thank you.
Thank you. So this is a public hearing. Please, if anybody wants to come forward and talk about the fiscal year 2018 final budget, please do so. Come up, state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Jill Coford, and I'm going to be out of town on some of your other public hearings, so Madam Chair, I hope you'll allow me a moment to talk about the budget and the proposed tax increase. As a resident of Ogden City and also a business owner in Ogden City, well, I should say a former business owner, because we recently sold the business property that we had in Ogden. A lot of reason that we sold it and are not looking in Ogden anymore for commercial property is because of the property taxes. The property that we owned in Ogden was 3 acres, had a similar size building as a property we were looking at in West Haven. Only that property had 5 acres. But in terms of the cap rate and the commercial income, they were pretty much equivalent. The property taxes in Ogden City, $19,000 on that property. The property taxes on the comparable property in West Haven, $8,500. As an investor, as a business owner, I can't make the numbers work to invest in Ogden City. My husband and I we're real estate investors. We've told our real estate agent, please don't look in Ogden. It doesn't make sense. And that makes me sad, because I am a lifetime Ogden resident. My dad was an Ogden City firefighter. I went to Weber State University. This is my town. I want to invest here, but I can't make the numbers work. When I look at my home in Ogden, in the east part of Ogden, versus an equivalent home in Park City, where my son goes to school and I drive him there every day, their property taxes are half of what I'm paying in Ogden City. And for my husband and I, okay, we can handle that. But I look at my neighbors down the street. The state is considering an income tax hike. The county just took a property tax hike, and now Ogden City is considering another property tax hike. I understand that the numbers are difficult, and you have a very difficult job, and I appreciate your diligence in looking at all of that. But I would really caution you about raising taxes again on our citizens. It is a burden that I don't think that we need to continue to do. Sorry, I thought I heard somebody say something. I just want to make sure I've covered all of my points. I think that I have. Our budget, I believe you said, is $500,000 short. In an $18 million budget, that's not a lot of money. In fact, I can tell you right now where you can find $500,000 and use it I believe more wisely, and that's probably a discussion for another day, that this council voted to give $500,000 to a private company, a private startup travel agency. You voted to give them $500,000. Maybe that money could be used better somewhere else. As a business owner, as somebody who wants to invest in Ogden, I'd sure like a $500,000 loan from this body, but I don't think you'll give it to me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Don't be shy. Well, seeing no movement, I would make a motion that we close the public hearing. Well, that we continue the public hearing to July 11th and August 8th.
I think we have to close this public hearing first.
Are we sure?
Continues fine. All right.
That's my motion.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Heyer, second by Councilmember Lopez to close today and then continue the public hearing to July 11th, 2017. The voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Well, I hope that you will also listen in on our Facebook Live. More to come. Next on the agenda is public comments. This is an opportunity to address the council regarding any concerns or ideas on any topic, not the budget, not salary schedules. Is there anyone here that would like to address the council?
Chair White, we will be continuing with the RDA after this. Or this, yeah. If there's people here for that.
Okay. Seeing no movement, we'll move right on to comments from the mayor or CAO over there.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Council members.
I would like to thank for those who have addressed their concerns about the budget. That helps us out a great deal, and I appreciate that information. I think it's very helpful, and it's for us to hear the concerns that the public have. On Saturday, I attended an immigration meeting that was outlined there at St. Joseph, and it was very educational to me. I had a better understanding of what some of the people who live in Ogden, what they go through. The mayor was there, and he addressed and answered some of the questions, and Chief Watt, our chief of police, was there, and he answered the questions and secured the citizens or the attendees there that his main concern is to make sure that our community is safe, and that's my goal, is to make sure that the community is safe. The Ogden City Schools was there and explained some of the details by which they keep their records very secure, but also their main interest is to make sure all of our children who attend their schools are educated. As you know, immigration does not stop at one culture. It crosses all cultures. In fact, we are all product of immigration, if you want to think about it. I had a great-grandmother who lived on 22nd Street, just below Newbridge School, and she came across the plains in a covered wagon. The things that I enjoy today is because of her taking that opportunity to cross the plains. And when she died, she saw a man go into space. She saw everything from a covered wagon to a man in space. Just think about that. Everything. In fact, in her home, she did not have a gas-burning stove. She prepared her meals on a wood-burning stove. And this was in the 1960s. She would talk about the Indians going to the Ogden River, and she would give them a loaf of bread, and they'd go on their way. That's what we enjoy. That's what makes America great, is because of those who came across to enjoy the freedoms that America has. and contribute their skills and not only make America great, but make our community great. And so I was very thankful for that opportunity of going through and sitting in on that meeting. Council Member Lopez was there, and he's a prime example of what he and his wife has accomplished because they're part of that immigration part. Their children are enjoying some of the blessings of this country because of what they have accomplished. Just closing, when my dad passed away, a speaker says my dad was colorblind. I didn't know that. He said he was colorblind because he treated everyone equal. It didn't matter what nationality you were or what color of skin you were. He was colorblind to that. And I hope someday someone says that to me, that I have enough concern for individuals that it doesn't matter who you are or what color of skin you have. I still should need to show the respect and consideration for that. And so I'm very thankful for that group that came and presented on Saturday. It was worthwhile to me.
Thank you.
I have a quick comment and potential question. I also appreciate the people that have come and speak up today. I think that that's important to keep our democracy vibrant and alive. So every time we have people that come and speak here, I'm very appreciative of that. To Mrs. or Ms. Cover's comments, I'm not sure if someone could help me with, just for the record, putting out the information on the share of taxes that comes from the other entities versus us, and especially the Ogden School District, which I believe is the one that takes the largest share. Janine, would you mind? Can you address that?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
So I don't know the exact, off the top of my head, the exact percentages, but Ogden School District takes more than 50% of what you pay in taxes. The city's rate percentage is about 18%. The county and the other taxing entities take up the rest.
And
So-
probably Weaver County takes even more than we do.
Yes, Weaver
than
County
Ogden City,
takes
right?
more than Ogden City.
So in all, between Ogden City and the county can account for almost 3/4 of the taxes, or close to,
It's true.
right? Okay. I don't know if you were aware of that, but just wanted to put that out. Thank you.
And if I could maybe just address one other point. She mentioned the $500,000 loan to the private company. Two things. That wasn't general fund money. That was CDBG money that can only be used for certain things. It's not money that comes from property tax. And second of all, we ended up not making that loan to that group, just so you know. And that's, I think council is aware of that, but maybe the general public isn't, so.
Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chair. Right.
Thanks for the clarifications. I just have one comment. Councilmember Garner and I were out at the press release or the press announcement of our new flights going out of the Ogden City Airport by Allegiant to Las Vegas and LAX. So that's an exciting time for us and an expansion and trying to work and figure out how to have economic growth out there and still make sure and maintain that our general aviation stays flourishing as well. So, and then one other quick comment, the farmers market's this weekend, so opening farmers market and a bunch of stuff happening downtown. Anybody else? All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Vice Chair Heyer, second by Councilmember Garner to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Ready? All right. Well, welcome to the Special Redevelopment Agency meeting of June 20th, 2017. Please note that all board members are present. With that, we have the public hearing on the Trackline Economic Development Area Budget Amendment.
Mr. Cooper will be presenting that.
Thank you, Chair White, members of the board. Appreciate your time tonight, and I appreciate your attention and dedication to the important matters that you've been discussing. We have one more to go, and considering that this is the last item on the agenda, I'm assuming that the folks that still remain in the audience are anxious to hear about what we have to talk about. And for that purpose, I'd like to take a little bit more time than what I originally intended, because we've all talked about this at length in work sessions and other settings. But given the interest tonight, I'd like to take a little bit more time and maybe answer some more questions and go through this a little more in depth. So before you is Resolution 2017-3, which amends the Trackline Economic Development Project Area Plan and Budget. It extends the original termination date from 2033 to 2045. It also extends the original budget amount from roughly $10.2 million to $18.2 million. As you recall, the Trackline Economic Development Area was established in April of 2013 and comprises quite a bit of area in the West Ogden neighborhood. This map shows the boundary of the area. This is west of the Ogden Rail Yard, north of 24th Street, just south of the Weber River, and also west of the Weber River. It's roughly 121, 122 acres. If you're familiar with where the old stockyards are, the bulk of that land in the middle of this map is where the old stockyards used to be. Excuse me, I think I jumped there. So in 2013, the purpose of creating this district was to look at the stockyards, the surrounding areas, and at largely West Ogden in general, to see what economic development strategies we can employ to create jobs, to remove blight, and to enhance public infrastructure, and to generally create a place where people and businesses would like to go. So this is the map that was included in the original proposal. It comprises 51 acres of the 122-ish acres of the project area, and this is dubbed the Ogden Business Exchange subdivision. So this was the major project that we embarked on accomplishing back in 2013, and we've roughly met all of the goals that we've set out to do. I'll explain in a moment what we're looking at there, but generally this could allow for a number of businesses, up to 12 or 13 businesses, and somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 to 700 new jobs. If you remember the condition of the stockyards back in 2013, it was a very rough area. A lot of the stockyards remained back then, a lot of the older buildings, the corrals, the infrastructure that the stockyards used. It had been abandoned in the 70s, and really the only thing that had gone into that area after the Coliseum burned down was the building that you see in the bottom right of the picture, which is Brentag Chemical. So this is a picture of the project in 2016. This is after the adoption of the project area plan in 2013. And after a number of years of investment through both through the city, the RDA, and private development with equity and debt. I just want to clarify that tonight's proposal is not a new tax increase to this area. It doesn't affect property taxes as otherwise been discussed tonight. All this does is allows the agency to collect the property taxes that otherwise would have gone to the various other taxing entities as discussed for a longer period of time, up to a larger amount of money than what was previously approved in 2013. So again, no new taxes, no additional property taxes, no impact to property owners, other than the fact that through the increase of the duration and the dollar amount, it would allow the agency and our private development partner to finish the work of the development that's been started. As I mentioned, this is an aerial view. Last year, you see a building up in the right-hand corner. That's NV Composites. They're completed and in operation. They employ over 150 people and anticipate to grow up to 300 people. The empty lot, I do have a hand. This empty lot here currently has a building being built on it. It will employ immediately 7 to 10 people and hopefully up to 50 at a given time. So there's been a lot of energy and a lot of effort put into getting the infrastructure complete as you see it here. Exchange Road has been fully rebuilt. This is also the route to the transfer station, so our city refuse trucks and private citizens who are bringing things to the transfer station generally will take this route. And if you recall the condition of the road back in 2013, it was nothing more than a single lane paved section with a bunch of dirt shoulder. The circular road that you see is a new road, and that road obviously gives access to the individual lots that are behind it and also in the interior of the property. And we chose to retain and eventually renovate and restore the historic Exchange building. This building was built in 1930, and it acted as the exchange facility for the business interactions that were conducted at the stockyards. And we've designed the entire project around this building to enhance the historic nature of what the stockyards meant to Ogden City. So that's a picture of what we hope it would become as soon as we're finished. Again, the proposal tonight allows an extension of both the duration of the collection period and the amount to be collected by the agency so that these final improvements can be made. The final improvements include an increase in the power backbone. The current power infrastructure in this location is insufficient to handle what we're anticipating the load to be in this area. That's a change from our original projections back in 2013. In addition, we're looking to enhance the landscaping and the access to the river so that private citizens can have access to the Weber River. Before the conception of this plan, this area was all blocked by the stockyards, and to get from Exchange Road to the Weber River and enjoy what that has to offer there, you would have to navigate a very dangerous place. It would be private property at that point. Our trail, the Centennial Trail, which is just east of this, only goes on one side of the river and not the other. So this really not only brings businesses, jobs, and industry back to a place that was really a robust commercial center back in the 40s and 50s for Ogden, but it also allows the public to access the river area once again. And we feel that's an amazing amenity to reintroduce back to the population. So the extension that's being proposed tonight would allow all of those enhancements to be complete. We would have a fully completed project, and that would then give us the ability to sell the remaining properties to interested businesses. So again, as a summary, the original approved term and budget in 2013 went from 2013 to 2033 and allowed the RDA to collect $10.2 million. And again, that wasn't new tax dollars. It was money that was otherwise going to the other taxing entities based on the new development. That's redirected to the agency and then allowed to be used for the investment into the infrastructure. The proposed amendment would to extend from 2033 to 2045, which is 12 years, and then capping that amount that the agency is able to collect to $18.2 million. And by doing that, again would allow us to complete the infrastructure improvements that we embarked on back in 2013. We've had a number of discussions about this, as I've mentioned. The state law requires that we meet with those other taxing entities under the establishment of a plan like this. So we not only did that in 2013 when we approved the original plan, but we also met with them on March 13th of this year, and we discussed the amendment of the term and also the dollar amount in the budget. We also met with this Ogden School District, as was mentioned. They are a major taxing entity. We met with the state school board, who gives direction to the local school districts on how these things are to be voted upon. We also met with the county and some other folks. And then we reconvened on May 8th as a taxing entity committee, which again comprises all of those taxing entities, and took a vote as to whether or not that group would approve the proposed budget amendment and increase in the amount collectible, and that was a unanimous approval by those TEC members. On May 16th, we set the public hearing, and that gets us today, June 20th, in terms of taking action on this proposal. So that is a general overview, a little bit more specific than what I intended, but I hope that helps folks in the audience understand that this is not a new tax. We hope that the improvements that have been made so far have brought safer traffic flows to the area. It certainly is doing its job in creating opportunity for new businesses. We've created property that otherwise was useless in terms of economic impact, and we've redeveloped that now into properties that are desirable by private businesses. They are buying these properties, bringing new jobs to the community. And we think that it's a wonderful thing. So we're accomplishing the goals. We had the unforeseen costs of environmental remediation and some other things that weren't forecasted in our original budgets that have required us to seek this extension. But I believe that by doing so, folks in this area are going to see some amazing changes still to come.
What's this project, how much money will it generate then when it's completed?
Well, we anticipate that once all of the buildings are built, so if you go back to maybe this picture here, you're looking at a number of buildings. There's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, potentially 10 buildings, a number of businesses in those buildings. With all the infrastructure in those buildings, this could be a $60 to $70 million project in terms of valuation. The stockyards, in 2012, when we analyzed its value, and that's the same geographic boundary that this project sits on, the stockyards were valued under $1 million. So we're taking land that was valued at roughly a little under $1 million to almost $70 million with an investment of about $22 million.
Questions or comments? All right, thank you. All right, this is a public hearing, and if anyone would like to come up and speak about the track line economic development area or in that West Ogden area, please feel free to do so. State your name and where you live, and you're fine.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Ladine Lanier. I live at 2386 D Avenue. D, you have 24th Street and D. We live right on the corner. We have a big garden there. We bought the house fall of 09. It had no landscaping. I have MS. My husband has diabetes. We did not want to have to water a large lawn or mow it because we have difficulty that way. Our home is handicap accessible. We bought it for $100,000. Now, when you go back to the original plan where you have the track line economic development area, it shows here that my house is going to be incorporated into that. With your new timeline that goes to 2045, when is my house no longer going to be there? And on page, I think it's the second page here, it says the extra tax increment will be used to pay costs of unforeseen conditions. And it goes on to say, clearing the project area and crushing concrete. Is clearing the project area taking my house and leveling it? And when's that going to happen? My husband and I are getting older. If you're going to buy my house, I'd rather have it now, sooner than later. Why? Because we're getting older. Because the property, what I bought in '09 for $100,000 is going to cost me $145,000 now to duplicate if I can. And that's just the bare bones. So I'd like some answers.
We can't, I don't have those answers, but we will, if you would like to speak to Mr. Cooper, he would be able to talk to you more about that area.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for coming up.
He could probably address that after the public hearing's closed.
If you can wait until after the public hearing, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Anyone else?
If you want to come up and
Just
address us
yeah.
and ask your questions, then we'll have Mr.
Oh.
Cooper address or answer all of them at the end.
They're all trying to decide who goes next.
I just more want to make it.
Just real quick, state your name.
Ezra Walter Lanier Jr.
Thank you.
That's the boss.
Okay.
This thing, I initially, when I heard about it, I didn't like it. I still don't like it. But I can remember when I was younger and looking for jobs, and there was no places for people with families or what have you to get jobs, because there just wasn't any business around where I was at the time. So I've changed my mind on this thing. I think this is a good thing. The thing that is bothering me is the part that we fall into. We're getting scarcely a lot of scarce information of what timetables, even if they're guesstimations, what's going to happen? When is it going to happen? We even had said once that they're not going to use eminent domain. That was on public record. Okay, how are they going to do it? What do they want to do it? There's a lot of people in that area that haven't shown up here that's asked questions, because I'm kind of a talkative old man. And questions I'd like to know too. Just, if you give me an estimation, because I know with government, I don't care what anybody says, it falls under the same basic rule: you follow the money. You can't do anything, no matter how worthy it is, until you get the financial funds. Now, you may change your timetables because of that. That happens. Nobody likes it, especially if you're in my boat, because I'm the one that's losing a property that I've taken from a grasshopper living area to, a nice little house. And I plan to live there. I'm a veteran, and I'm 90% disabled with Agent Orange, so I'm pretty well figuring, this is a little house that I'm going to be in until I'm not anymore. And now I'm looking about possibly having to move and start all over again. That really sucks. But again, just give us some information more on it. We don't, we're in the dark, pretty much. That's the way we feel. That's the way the consensus that I get. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for speaking, and again, Mr. Cooper can answer those questions for you, and thank you for serving as well. So, thank you.
Hey, how do you tell? Oh, the time's there. Okay.
Hello,
Hi.
I'm Sandra Anderson. I also live on D Avenue. My mother's house is the home I'm speaking of. She's passed away. If we were to put that house up for sale, do we have to put this in the contract that well, whenever you're going to have to move. That was my question. They hit on a lot of the other stuff.
Kind of questions. Okay. All right. Thank you. It sounds like there's a lot of questions, and again, I'm deferring them to Mr. Cooper back there, but I think he'll be able to answer them.
When it's all
Yep,
over.
after we're done, or after there's more.
Chair and members of the board, a lot of the questions my
State
wife
your
and I
name real
had-
quick.
What's that?
State your name real quick.
Matthew McCadden. We live in the same neighborhood, and we just bought here, and we were unaware of all of this going on, and so we were a little nervous, and we wanted some of our questions answered as well. I noticed that the answer that I need most was slightly touched on, but we bought that house, and it was the cheapest house in Ogden. It also happened to be the only one we could afford. Now when you're going to come through and all this is going to get taken away, and I've read a lot into eminent domain and fair market value, and I haven't learned enough to make me feel comfortable with the fact that when my property's taken, that my family is going to be able to relocate into a similar property. Like the young lady said, $100,000 difference to $145,000 difference to replace her property, and I find myself to be in the same position and terrified that I'm not going to be able to replace my property. I know obviously you guys don't have those answers, but if we could get a hearing, get some time with these guys, get somewhere where the residents in that area, many of them who are not here, who have expressed their concerns to me and the other neighbors, that we're all a little worried that we won't have anywhere to go. And we don't want to see that happen. So, and we're excited for the development. In fact, I bought in that area because of the development. I was hoping to see West Ogden come up and to find myself rising to the top of the cream rather than getting turned into butter. So if we could get that addressed, that'd be great.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else?
Going.
So, if, oh yeah, we probably should do that. Thank you.
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
We have a motion to close the public hearing by Vice Chair, or Board Member, Vice Chair Heyer, Board Member Blair. Thank you. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is closed, but I would like to see if,
I'll start out, and then
Thank you.
if I don't quite get there, then Mr. Cooper will bail me out. We're not going to buy any of your homes. You're in them. We like you to be in that area. The only area we're developing is right down where the stockyards used to be on Exchange Road. So on D Avenue, you're safe. We hope you'll stay there a long time and be part of our community. This action has nothing to do with taking anyone's home. In fact, this area doesn't even have the opportunity of eminent domain. So part of this redevelopment area, there's no eminent domain available to us. We are simply trying to rebuild the stockyards, and we're using the tax money from this entire area to help fund the infrastructure and the things that we're doing in that area. Like I said, we're glad good people are buying those homes. We want you to stay there. We want you to feel comfortable. You're not threatened. We're not coming looking for your house. We want you to stay there and be part of the community, and we're trying to build the community and bring some value to the community, so maybe your home values will rise while you're in them, and someday when mom dies and you want to sell it, then you can get more money out of it than what you bought it for. So we want to put you completely at ease. We are not taking anyone's home as part of this. We already have this development area in place. We simply needed a few more years to take the tax money that we've been taking to pay for the infrastructure. And so we added 12 years on because we had unexpected expenses down there at the stockyard where we're redeveloping. Does that make sense? Okay. Well, I wasn't here and responsible for what you were told. I'm telling you now, this is exactly correct, and we're sorry that you misunderstood and got a little bit of anxiety over it, because that was not our intent.
Who could any of the folks that came and speak today could call if they have follow-up questions?
Absolutely, and Mr. Cooper will be back here. I will, right after the meeting. We'd be happy to answer any
So
questions.
it would be good to, if that's okay, to provide a contact name and a number that they could call, just in case.
Absolutely.
I think also we ought to encourage us to maybe not, because timelines change, as because they change with each project, but maybe if we could some way filter that information out to that community would be maybe helpful, of what things we're looking at and maybe a projected time that we would be there. So.
Okay.
If you don't mind, if I encourage you to not leave without a contact name and a phone number that someone here will provide to you, so that if you have more questions, you feel the freedom to call anytime and address anyone here. If just wanted to put that out.
If you still have some concerns, we'd be happy to talk to you tonight, so that you sleep tonight when you go home and you're not worried.
There you go. Okay.
Motion?
I'll make a motion that we adopt proposed resolution 2017-3.
Second.
Motion by Vice Chair Heyer and second by Board Member Blair to adopt this resolution. This is a roll call vote.
Board Member Lopez.
Aye.
Board Member Nadolski.
Aye.
Board Member Stevens.
Aye.
Board Member Blair.
Aye.
Board Member Garner.
Aye.
Vice Chair Heyer.
Aye.
Chair White.
Aye. That passes.
Chair, I sat here and I wondered, I thought, boy, if I thought my house was going to be taken, I would be really, really worried. And I've wondered why. It sounds like maybe it was just a rendition that maybe looked like it included your, I don't know. We need to probably make sure that we are not sending the wrong message somehow. I don't know how that happened, but maybe you could help when you talk to Mr. Cooper, because he's the one that does these things, and his department does.
Did he leave,
So-
by the way?
So he's here.
He's behind the column.
Hiding behind the pillar? Okay.
Goes behind the pillar, but yeah, if you would bring that up, because we certainly don't want to duplicate that mistake.
So, Mrs. Lanier, in just a moment, we're going to come back and talk with Mr. Cooper with you.
But also, we should give periodic updates to what's happening in that project, so that they are abreast of what's going on.
This might be one of those that we put on our website for site or project updates, so that you all can keep an eye on it through our Ogden City's website. So. We'll see if we can't make sure it's easy for you.
Chair White, can I make a comment?
Yes,
I want
please.
to commend the people that are here. I share Vice Chair Heyer's comments that if I were in fear of losing my home, you better believe it, I'd be really upset, and I wouldn't sleep. And I would have shown up tonight a lot more upset than you all were at us, so I thank you for very nice. You were very nice. I thank you for being so cordial, but also apologize for misunderstandings. That's clearly not our intent, but I do hope that we are a body that listens, and I do hope that you see this as an opportunity to get your questions answered. That is the purpose of tonight's hearing. And I saw mostly nods yes, that your questions were being answered and concerns allayed. So a little bit of uncertainty there, but I trust, in my experience with Brandon Cooper, you're going to get the answers you need. And he's wearing a bright pink shirt for all you guys, so you can't miss him, and he won't be able to sneak out. So, thank you all for coming.
No, that's a UDOT road. So if D Avenue would be the city, would be punching it through in order to go down to Exchange Road.
And can we maybe address that after this?
Yeah.
If you don't mind, if we finish and answer
Sorry,
the
Chair.
questions? No, that's okay. Sounds like there might be many questions, so, and we're really close to being done, so that's, I just wanted to get
Our current
that.
format doesn't allow us for
I
this kind
know.
of exchange.
So we on to the next thing?
Yep.
And then may I make a motion that we pull item number 3 from our agenda today?
Second?
We have a motion by Vice Chair Heyer, second by Board Member Nadolski to pull the next item on the agenda.
This is a voice vote.
This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Public comment. This is an opportunity to address the agency regarding any issues or ideas on any topic. So is there anybody that hasn't been able to voice their opinions or wants something else? Seeing no movement on that, comments from the executive director or proxy unit?
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Board members? I just want to echo that it takes a lot of courage to get up in front of us, so thank you for doing that. And please don't leave before you get a chance to have some of your questions answered. With that,
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
motion by Board Member Garner, second by Board Member Stevens. This is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, this is a wrap.